My name is Jessie, and I always work in the teacher development and quality control team. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that the Chinese students can be extremely shy at the beginning of the class, especially when you run into a trial student, or if you teach a very low-level students. Usually they're very shy, and these are usually how they react to the teachers. Like, they look at you and they listen to they hear something, and then they look at their parents, and then they just react to their parents and then not responding to you at all. Or sometimes the parents push them to say something to the teacher, respond, and they will feel shy and they will start to hide from the camera like this. So that's very common to see, especially when you are teaching Chinese students or maybe some of the other Asian countries. Their parents usually expect their children to perform very well in front of strangers or teachers. They expect their children to answer the correct answers all the time, and they like to feel that their children is special and smart and they're well trained. But turns out that the first time with everything is usually very difficult, and that makes the students really shy because they know their parents' expectations. So they are afraid of trying out something they're not sure. So at the beginning, okay, I don't know this teacher, I don't know the word, or I don't understand this question. I might just feel like hide myself. That make me feel more secure than just trying out something with the teacher. So that will be a very common situation that you will run into when you started with the Chinese students. You might notice this situation very common, that some certain behavior happen at certain age of all the children around the world, which means that they don't want to follow teachers' instructions. They wanted to feel special. They wanted to behave special. So of course it happened to certain of the students, but you might see that more often in Chinese classes as well, because part of them is that they have turned into certain age and they started to feel they wanted to feel special during the classes. So they wanted to shout out their answers. They wanted to ignore all the instructions and rules. They wanted to make themselves to be the special one in the class. But also because some part of them were caused by Chinese culture is that they might cause the students shy or overbehave during the class on the very same reason, which is that parents usually expect them to always answer the correct answer. So if they don't get the correct answer, or they're not confident with their answers in their head, they feel shy and hide out, and they just keep silent and not responding to teachers. Or they over-respond to teachers, like shouting out and screaming and wanted to how do I say? They wanted to behave more aggressively with their classmates. I want you to know that this is very common because of some cultural differences. So this can be very common to see in Chinese classroom, and do not over-educate them or do not feel surprised or shocked by this. Just be prepared for this situation. Just be prepared that you might run into them very often. Oh, so sometimes you might see the parents or any adult family members that's sitting around or walking around in their background of the classroom, and sometimes they're not very dressed well. Really, they're not that sensitive. So what explains that they always are walking around with shirtless dad. They don't care that much about that. So they don't care that themselves being shot in that kind of situation. So the privacy stuff is not as sensitive as we see that in the US. But please do not freak out during the class. If you see certain things in Magic Year's classes, you can always shut their camera to avoid distractions for other students or classmates in the classroom. But normally, please do not react very surprisingly, or do not stop the teaching, because that will be unfair for the other students, because they are very well behaved and they wanted the class to be proceed. So just shut their camera and you can go on teaching. So the kids are very cute, and sometimes they like to interact with the teachers during the class. Not only by answering their questions, but also sometimes they will say, "Oh, teacher, you are so cute. Teacher, you are so funny." And sometimes they say the words that describe teacher that make the teacher feel offensive. But there are some cultural differences about that. So first of all, a certain words does not have offensive meaning in Chinese language. So when the students translate those words into English directly, they might sound very offensive in English. For example, sometimes the students might describe teachers' appearances with certain adjectives, but those adjectives can be very offensive in English, but maybe they're not that offensive in Chinese. So the kids feel like it's okay to say that word. So it's language differences and also cultural differences thing. So please do not feel the students are being rude or intend to be rude to the teachers. Sometimes it's not insulting. Sometimes it's just their way to interact with the teachers. And also sometimes when teachers use props or they are combining themselves to the story of the curriculum, they will also call the teachers as an object or an animal. So it's also not a kind of insult because the students don't have the language ability to describe specifically about how they feel or what do they think. So sometimes they use very simple words to say that the teacher is not a human being. Teacher is this, teacher is that. Again, it's not kind of an insult. Maybe it's just because their language level is not there, so they cannot describe the situation precisely with their language. Sometimes if you feel that you are concerned about that situation or you have question, you can always contact the staff in Beijing team and ask, is that normal? Is that okay? But you don't have to react on it during the class. You can always ask us to check out. If that is a situation we might need to deal with, we usually contact the parents. But normally is nothing offensive. The children don't mean to be rude or to insult the teachers. I am aware that the gun subject is a very serious subject that in the US, and they cause a lot of issues every year, and people are very sensitive on this topic as well. But here is the situation that in China, people are not allowed to have any powered gun, but we are okay to have toy guns. And even though the toy guns sometimes look very legit, but still they are toy guns because we do not have like the legal access to all kinds of guns. So it's not as sensitive as the topic is in the US because they usually have a couple of gun toys at their home and they wanted to show off during the class sometimes. So if you see a boy waving around with a gun-shaped toy and looks very real, do not freak out. Usually they're just a toy, okay? Because we do not have gun. Like most of Chinese people, we never seen a real gun in our whole life. So we're not very sensitive with that kind of toy, and we are not sensitive to that topic either. And it doesn't mean something very violent, or it doesn't mean they're going to hurt someone, or is not a careless parents or whatsoever. The teachers might see the parents around the classroom very often. Sometimes they might just sit next to their students and taking pictures, taking videos, and sometimes they were just answering all the teachers' questions for the students. And sometimes they wanted to whisper to their child to tell them the answers. And sometimes they were just being very angry and shouted at their kids like, why don't you answer the question? Why don't you know the answers? These are pretty common. All of these are pretty common, but all of them are very cultural. That all of them are based on cultural differences because the Chinese parents sometimes feel that their children always need their help in any ways, so they wanted to make sure their children to feel secure around the classes. in any way. So for example, they want their children to be accompanied with someone else, and they don't want their children to feel embarrassed when they don't know the answers. Sometimes they don't want the teacher to feel that their children don't know the answer, so they wanted to say the answer for the kids, to avoid this awkward silence in between. So these are also something that happen very common, and it will happen to Chinese classroom as well. Sometimes their parents feel embarrassed if their kids don't know the answer or being shy. They wanted to do things for them instead. That's very common. And also sometimes when they are filming or taking pictures, while their kids are doing really well, it's just a way that they wanted to show something to their parents or relatives. They might just wanted to brag, like, see how great my child is. The parents does not intend to offend the teachers by taking photos or taking videos. It's more like to record their performances of their children, to show them to their relatives and friends. Hope that will be understood by the teachers.
If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please click Bonnie to subscribe